Browder was born on January 29, 1919, and raised in Montgomery, Alabama. She contributed to the Montgomery community by being a nurse, midwife, seamstress, businesswoman, and housewife. However, she did not complete high school until her 30s. She graduated with honors from Alabama State Teachers College, now Alabama State University, in 1956. It was during her time in college that she was inspired by a professor to become involved in tackling the injustices of the transportation system. By being all these things for the Montgomery community, and then being the lead plaintiff in the Browder v. Gale case, Aurelia Browder most likely was highly recognized during the time for resistance to Jim Crow segregation in the transportation system within the Montgomery bus boycott. Aurelia Browder was a woman involved in the Montgomery bus boycott. She was the main plaintiff in the Browder v. Gale case, a court case deciding if segregation on buses was legal or illegal. The lone figure myth is one where a single person by themselves enacts social change without assistance from others. However, we don't know much about her because of the lone figure myth pervading the public consciousness. The idea of one person standing against injustice, like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. Most versions of this desegregation story begins with Rosa Parks' courageous stand and end with the Supreme Court's ruling, often failing to mention the case or the names of Browder and the other plaintiffs. This may be because Parks' case was a criminal case, which would garner much more attention as it would be more challenging to elevate to the Supreme Court. On April 19, 1955, Aurelia Browder was arrested for refusing to give up her seat for white passengers on a Montgomery bus, 8 months before Rosa Parks was famously arrested for the same offense. In her testimony, she reports she was forced by the bus driver to get up and stand to let a white man and a white lady sit down. 3 other plaintiffs, Mary Louise Smith, Claudette Colvin, and Susie McDonald, had reported similar mistreatment. The cumulative effect of these demeaning, wretched, intolerable impositions and conditions, as boycott organizer Joanne Robinson referred to them, inspired Montgomery's black community to begin developing plans for a boycott that eventually began after the arrest of Rosa Parks. On February 1, 1956, she served as the lead plaintiff in the Browder v. Gale case, filing suit in U.S. Federal District Court, challenging the constitutionality of Montgomery's bus segregation statutes. All 4 women testified to their mistreatment on city buses, while the city argued that it had been enforcing the laws as written. On June 5, 1956, as Browder v. Gale challenged the constitutionality of a state statute, a 3-judge panel ruled in favor of a 2-to-1 decision, stating the enforced segregation of black and white passengers on motor buses violates the Constitution and laws of the United States, specifically the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. The city immediately appealed the ruling, sending it to the Supreme Court for review. In an appeal on November 13, 1956, the U.S. Supreme Court unanimously affirmed the federal court's ruling in the case of Browder v. Gale, resulting in Montgomery City buses becoming desegregated on December 22, 1956. This court case also overturned Plessy v. Ferguson's doctrine of separate but equal, which supported Jim Crow segregation in the United States, making it legal to exclude black people from certain places of businesses, among other areas like parks and schools. The boycott continued through the remaining months of 1956, capturing attention and igniting passions across the country. Black citizens were finally participating in a mass direct action movement to resist Jim Crow. This mass action from the black community shows that it was not just one person making the change, but numerous black citizens discounting the lone figure myth. In his interview, contrary to popular belief of Rosa Parks and MLK Jr. being the only influential people during the Civil Rights Movement, Butler Browder, Aurelia Browder's son, states Browder v. Gale has for the most part been left out of the saga. It began with the arrest of Rosa Parks and ends with the court making the decision. when in fact it began years before with Plessy versus Ferguson, and continued mistreatment for many, many years, and ended with Browder versus Gale. Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. have dominated the cultural mythology of the boycott and the movement at large, which causes difficulty to educators attempting to capture the lesser-known accounts and resist telling a simple story in their teaching about the civil rights movement. It is also a fact that has troubled Butler Browder, who laments that the world never got to know the woman behind the lawsuit, meaning that all the world knows is that she was part of the lawsuit, if they even know about the lawsuit at all, as Parks' story is more well known. For students studying the movement, the knowledge that the boycott was the carefully planned and meticulously orchestrated work of thousands of largely unknown activists is, in and of itself, a revelation, and has the power to build understanding of the difficult process behind social change. As it is a revelation to students, they most likely believe that the boycott was solely the work of Rosa Parks and her refusal to allow the white man and white woman to take her seat. Aurelia Browder's attitude in response to the intimidation she faced shows that she was an important part of the civil rights movement, as she would fight for what she believed in and not be deterred by incessant harassment or threats of danger and violence, even to her children. Butler Browder also recalls an aunt warning his mother that agitating could get her killed. She was undeterred, reportedly reflecting that she had to die for something. If you live and haven't stood for anything, you didn't live for anything either. This quote conveys that if you have lived your life without upholding your beliefs, then you have never believed in a cause enough that you would risk your life for.
If it's worth teaching, it's worth teaching the whole story, not just a portion of it. The part you leave out may just turn out to make your story a lie. I'd like educators, teachers, just average Joes to know that a woman who at the time was not a college graduate, who was no different than any other person, decided she'd make a stand and make a difference.
What Butler Browder means here is that regardless of your social standing and education, you can still make a difference in the world simply by having an ideal toward change. Butler Browder stating the part you leave out may just turn out to make your story a lie means when you only tell a part of a person's life, in this case his mother, it is like lying, as it is not the whole story or event, like how Rosa Parks is the centerpiece of the Montgomery bus boycott, when there are countless other people who had an integral role in the movement, like Aurelia Browder. However, their stories are overshadowed by history largely only giving Parks the credit, while even Aurelia's life is overshadowed by her part in the court case, as not much is known about her besides that. Without Aurelia Browder's story, the full story of the Montgomery bus boycott would not be known. All contributors' stories are important, as without every individual person together striving to make social change, that change would not happen. Likewise, it is important to remember and have everyone's parts known. Otherwise, people who stood up against injustice and strived for an ideal of change would not be remembered in the very movement and change they were integral towards creating.